nutrient diversity, the variety of micronutrients, is going to show up in your life in other ways. It's going to show up in that satiety. It's going to show up in the energy. It's going to show up in the little things, feeling satisfied, enjoying the food. And maybe this is the dark horse of the holidays, that you're eating things you don't otherwise typically have. It's inherently variety. Maybe it's an overlooked gift of this season. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your health coach and host, Jenn Trepeck, always here with you every week for wellness without the weirdness. Joining me today is Christine. She's a longtime friend of the pod, although it's been a minute since you've been here. Welcome back.
I'm happy to be back, and I can't remember exactly when we recorded the last one, but glad to be here.
I know. I can't either, but we'll fill everybody in anyway for our new listeners, for people joining us this holiday season. So Christine and I do a lot of work together. We are together with a third partner, co-founders of Anodanos, which offers education and a systemized approach of integrative care for chronic pain. It's a mouthful, I know. We have done webinars together. I can't even count how many webinars we have done together over the years. Mm-hmm. And Christine, you were also our first ever interview on Salad with a Side of Fries.
That's right.
All about acupuncture. Yes,
yep.
Exactly. So anyway, I'm thrilled you're here for this episode. And I asked you to join me for this episode specifically because your background as an acupuncturist, you've also been a massage therapist. You have studied traditional Chinese medicine. Like, you're just a wealth of knowledge. And I can't wait to hear what you think about this conversation and what you have to add to this topic. So today, we're talking about the health tool that no one's talking about. And that is nutrient diversity. And it's probably like lackluster. I don't know what everybody thought the answer to that question was going to be. Probably not that, but we'll talk more about what it means, why we're not really getting it, why it's so important, and of course, what we can do to get more of it. What do you think, Christine?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. She's like, whatever you say, right?
But also it's an important topic, so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and it's funny because so this time of year, right? It's December, holiday season. It's almost a time where I think people get anxious about the food stuff or the health stuff and typically kind of table it till the new year. And I actually think the reason why we're talking about this now is because to me, this time of year offers a tremendous opportunity for that nutrient diversity.
Yes.
She's nodding, everybody. You can't see that, but
well, I was just thinking, I mean, this is not very appealing, but I went to a party, an office party when I worked on Wall Street, and there was the largest bowl of raw meat that I had ever seen in my life. And I guess that's, steak tartare in France, that's a thing.
Yeah.
I'm a vegetarian. Yeah. So, here we're going to be recommending try new things. But that particular day, I was a little bit in shock. Like, I didn't know there was so much raw meat on the planet.
Right. So funny. All right. Well, before we get too far into it, super quick, let's talk about the Happy Healthy Hub. So members, your recipe this week is for Southwestern Power Salad with creamy cilantro lime dressing. It is nutrient diversity in a bowl. So yes, there are quite a few ingredients, and it's also super simple to put together. The creamy dressing too is awesome. So you're going to get the recipe, the dressing recipe, and then I'm also sending you, this is from the Maryland Department of Health, a farmer's market cookbook what's more than the 24 recipes that they have in there is it helps you see what's in season in different months. And then it sort of has the nutrients on the recipe, or the recipes are organized by nutrient that they're focusing on. So I just think it adds to our understanding of what we're choosing when we select different recipes. So if you want this recipe, if you want the Farmer's Market cookbook, be sure you're a member of the Happy Healthy Hub. So you'll go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership for just $12 a month. By the way, you can prepay the whole year and you get 2 months free. Then it becomes $10 a month. You get weekly recipes, curated articles, discounts from me and our partners, expert interview episodes in full video, including behind-the-scenes content, a community board with the ability to post and comment on others' posts, plus access to the 24/7 AMA or Ask Me Anything. This helps target your specific questions or challenges. You can upvote other people's questions, see past questions and answers, and more. So I say it all the time. This really is the next best thing to my 12-week signature coaching program. It allows you to get some extra support and kind of level up without having to go in with both feet or spend more than you feel like in this moment. So if you're ready to level up your health this winter, support this podcast and everything we do so we can keep doing this together, go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership or click the link in the episode notes below. From there, you'll click subscribe, follow the prompts to enter your payment info, create your login to access the hub, and you'll get this week's recipe for the Southwestern Power Salad with creamy cilantro lime dressing, plus the Farmer's Market cookbook. Okay, nutrient diversity, the tool no one's talking about. So let's just start with what it means, right? When we say nutrient diversity, what we're really talking about is the micronutrients. And most of the time these days, especially when we hear the word nutrients, we think of macronutrients. We think of protein, carbohydrates, fats, the macronutrients that we need in larger quantities. And it's because everybody seems to be talking about macros. Like that's the only thing that matters. And I ask in every episode when we have an interview, I ask people, what's the next frontier in wellness? And I don't know why people aren't talking about the micros, because I think that's where, I'm hopeful that this conversation will help move us in that direction, because we need a variety of vitamins and minerals. And not just that, but even as we've talked about antioxidants before in various nutrition nuggets in various episodes, there are a multitude of types of antioxidants, and they function in different capacities in different places in the body. Like I've described it as locks and keys, and there isn't necessarily one key for every lock. So even when it comes to, antioxidants, it's not just one antioxidant or one source of antioxidants. We really need this variety, out of curiosity. So people focus, on fiber coming from vegetables and fruit, and that helps us get these micronutrients. Any idea what the World Health Organization recommends for how much, fruit or vegetables we're supposed to have in a day? You have any guesses, Christine?
Oh, yeah. Well, it should be, I'm thinking 8 to 10 servings.
Yeah, so I should have done this math. They say 400 grams of fruits and vegetables each day in order to reduce the risk of chronic disease. I mean, we recommend 8 to 12 servings. I'm pretty sure that 400 grams is probably a low ball if I think about 8 to 12 servings. But again, it depends. Is it a tomato? Is it an apple versus spinach? There's also fun facts. So the Food and Agriculture Organization has what they call the minimum dietary diversity indicator. And they say that eating from at least 5 of 10 food groups daily predicts adequate nutrient intake. And again, they're looking at that in terms of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and other like building blocks of nutrients that support the body. I'm curious to hear your opinion, Christine. I have my own thoughts, but why do you think we're not getting it these days?
A lot of the food industry has
Yeah.
changed, and the primary thrust of what a product should have in terms of selling more of them is how it feels on your tongue, the taste, the salt, the sugar. And so, if you think, okay, so where do these vitamins and micronutrients show up? They're added to bread, they're added to milk, but nobody's thinking about what would it be like to have those nutrients in really fresh local foods that you could get like from the local farm. Like in the old days, I think it was somebody was talking about the ideal society would have about 150 people
Huh.
surrounding the farm or the several farms. And that way they could go right in and get the different vegetables they need, get the different, like if you eat meat or if you eat cheese, butter, and things like that, that it would be right there. And so then you'd have all these communities where everybody knows your name. It's like Cheers, and to have
Right.
something that you're really wanting the best for everybody in the community because you know everybody. So the food quality would really matter. The way what we have now, these big impersonal supermarkets where you don't get that warm, fuzzy feeling that anyone cares about you. You just have this feeling that you're a customer or a consumer and you're being sold to with all these, it's almost like gimmicks and tricks. And I don't think that they're paying much attention at all to this will make everyone really healthy and they'll feel so much better and
No.
they'll have
Well,
more energy.
it's funny. Ever since the book, I keep having these conversations of how do we adjust the systems around us to improve this? And I come back to over and over the incentive structure. And so, to your point, the incentive structure is not designed to care about our health outcomes with the food. And even when we think about farming practices, and again, we've talked about this on many episodes, where we don't have crop rotation anymore. So we're always pulling the same nutrients from the soil. And then even if we do rotate the crops, in order for the red pepper to be pretty when it ends up in your grocery store, even as impersonal as your grocery store may be, right? Then it's picked from the vine far before it's actually ripe, but it only gets nutrients from the soil if it's connected to the vine. And then we end up in this whole snowball of foods, even the fruits and vegetables that are fresh and in your grocery store today do not have the same nutrients that they did even 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Never mind what the animals are being fed.
Right.
Like the chicken, the beef.
Yes.
It's like
I
when
always talk about this too, like in those documentaries and stuff on Netflix, when everybody gets all up in arms about the meat. It's like, have we ever done a study to look at the quality of the meat? Like, does it matter if we're eating the cows that had, the corn and the chickens who had feed versus actually eating grass?
well, grass fed. I mean, that's the attraction, and they charge more for that, which is kind of ironic because grass is free. You have to buy all that feed. My father used to always laugh at me because brown rice was more expensive than white rice. He couldn't understand that because you're doing less to the brown rice, but it gets into this kind of elite category, and so sometimes the more expensive they are.
Right, which is such a shame because we're one of only a handful of countries where that's the case. And by the way, it goes back to what I was saying of the incentive structure, right? If our objective is to make this food last longer on the shelf, we are incentivized to use all of these other things that are not from nature because they last longer. That whole snowball. But so interesting, you brought up rice. So I read this comes from I may be saying this wrong, but it's the EAT Lancet Commission. So they reported that 3 crops now provide over half of the world's plant-based calories. You ready for those three crops? Any guesses of what they are?
Corn, wheat, soy.
Rice.
Oh,
So
rice. Oh, yeah,
rice,
rice.
wheat, and maize are the three crops that provide over half of the world's plant-based calories. And those foods, while they offer some nutrients, are generally not powerhouses for what we need, especially when it comes to the vitamins and minerals and things like that. What we see, so over time, when people continue to eat less and less variety, when we're only getting a handful of nutrients or always getting the same nutrients, the human body is less resilient to illness or disease. And it puts the body in a state of stress. It puts the body in a state of survival and pulling nutrients often from the bone or from other places in an effort to keep critical systems still functioning, And then what we see when people do get the variety of phytochemicals and bioactive ingredients, right, or really components of foods, is that it can help protect against certain diseases. So studies show that eating a wide variety of nutrients is linked with lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes, reduced risk of metabolic syndrome, lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of malnutrition, longer life expectancy. I mean, none of those things sound like the opposite of what we want. It's like, I feel like we're sort of making the case for nutrient diversity and eating a variety of foods. And yet, it's funny to me that we feel the need that that's required.
That we even have to discuss it.
Right. There was a study that was published in 2021. They looked at more than 3,000 elderly Chinese people, and they saw a more diverse diet contributed to healthier aging. Greater dietary diversity was linked with better cognitive function, fewer physical function limitations, and less psychological stress, too. And then every time we talk about gut health, we talk about how we need a variety of nutrients in order to have microbiome diversity. There are studies. So the American Gut Project found that people who ate 30 or more different plant foods a week had a more favorable gut microbiome compared to those who ate 10 or less. Now, I do think there's a range between 10 and 30. So I'm not totally sure about digging into that study, but it goes to our point of greater diversity improves health.
And I think of when I was studying herbs for Chinese medicine, they would call it a soup. It was almost like a stew, but it would have so many ingredients. And when we would go and shop for the ingredients in Chinatown, you could see all the moms and the sisters all, with their shopping carts and things. And not just diversity in terms of what it would make like a soup, but it also looked so different, like the different kinds of soy and the different fungus, all the different mushrooms, it just looks so different. Where when I'm in an American store, you've got the loaf of bread and you've got a couple of sodas and, it's just not the diversity that I saw when I was in Chinatown.
Yeah, for sure. And so that brings up a great point of even just recognizing different color foods are indicators of different nutrients. So if we think back to caveman era, the different colors appealed to different parts of the brain and were basically signals of survival and thriving and energy and health versus everything being, kind of dry and brown or, not. So if we think about green vegetables, nobody really loves kale these days. Like, people are very polarized on kale. I just think people don't necessarily know what to do with it or how to treat it so that it doesn't feel like eating hay. But like spinach and kale. So with our green vegetables, think iron and folate and magnesium. Orange and yellow foods. So we have like pumpkin and mango and your winter squashes and certain bell peppers. It's lots of beta-carotene, which we talk about for vision and immune support. Red and purple foods have antioxidants. So like beets and eggplant, there's antioxidants, there's support for blood flow, so many things. But if we start to think about different colors And then even the deeper the color, the more antioxidants. So we think about blueberries and blackberries and plums versus a pear. Now, having said that, white foods like mushrooms, like you were talking about, garlic, cauliflower, onions, they too offer us different nutrients. Those tend to support our bone health, our circulatory system, arterial function, like all of your arteries, part of your circulation. So everything serves a purpose. And if we can just start to think of, how many things can we put on our plate? How many different colors? Like when I work with the kids and families, it's how many colors can we get on the plate at a time? I'm just looking at my notes here. It's interesting too. Not eating the variety can also sometimes be when we have the digestive upset. Maybe it's gas or bloating or things like that, where we think it's a function of the thing we're eating. Maybe it's a function of only eating those same things. Because even some of those foods that we eat, some of those fibers we want to ferment to create the short chain fatty acids, which are then your postbiotics, right? Support the immune system, the gut-brain connection, so many pieces where anything we're experiencing makes the argument for us to look at what are we missing. Does that resonate with you? What do you think about?
Yeah, and it's not always like you said, you might blame, the eggplant or the squash or something, if you're feeling a little bloated or something. But maybe it was the fact that you had, just squash on your plate and you didn't have some of these other vegetables to balance out. Like now when I roast my vegetables, I've probably got a minimum of 4 or 5 different kinds in there. And I never get that bloat that I used to get from just, maybe an eggplant or something, where you'd feel a little bit just raw and irritated. So I do think that they all kind of work together. It's kind of when they talk about trees outside that they communicate through that fungus network. I think probably inside of us that these vegetables are sort of, enjoying the fact that they're all being digested together. That's just my fantasy. That's not scientific.
Right. But it makes sense, right? Because there's always this symbiosis in nature that I don't think goes away once those things are ingested, and the body pieces things back together, maybe in slightly different ways.
What I found over the years is that sometimes I've had an intuitive sense about something, and 10 years later, the study will come out that confirms it. So again, we need to develop those intuitive senses to say, what kinds of foods am I missing and what kinds of foods is my body asking for? You need to kind of quiet yourself and listen to that because, again, if you go into that noisy supermarket with the music playing and you just grab a box of something, you've missed that communication between what your body is maybe asking for.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of that, I think some ways that we can think about maybe what our body is asking for, try to decipher some of those cravings. So I talk all the time, this is more of a macronutrient thing, where when we're craving sugar, we're often undereating protein. But cravings are another way for the body to communicate its needs to us. So we can start to understand, now there's some research that says chocolate cravings may be connected to low magnesium levels, and cravings for meat and cheese may be low iron or calcium. I think, again, to your point, it's really just about tuning in and paying attention and experimenting instead of following rules all the time. But it also makes me think of, I've talked about before this idea. Well, a few things are coming to mind. So one is sensory-specific satiety, which is when we continue to eat the same things all the time, we start to make up in volume what we're lacking in variety. So maybe you're eating broccoli all the time, and now in order to feel satisfied, you're eating more and more broccoli, which nothing's wrong with that. But if you are then experiencing some gas or you're not satisfied kind of no matter what you eat, it makes the argument for changing it up. What else could we put in there? Could we have less broccoli and add some eggplant, some onions, some bell peppers or winter squash or whatever it is to have more there that boredom can help bring quantities back into check.
I remember going to a one of these resorts up in the Catskills, and most of the food was what I call white food or brown food. So a lot of spaghetti and nothing really tasted that good. And I remember thinking, I'm eating more than I ever eat at home. And it was just because I wasn't satisfied. Like I just kept, which is the opposite of what you would think. You would think, oh, this is terrible, I'm not going to eat it. But instead, I kept looking for that taste. I kept looking for maybe the nutrients too. I don't know. But it was an odd experience that it reminded me that, like, actually, when you get like quality foods that taste really good, because that's another part of this, is like those peppers you were talking about that come a long way, and then they're not really right, they don't taste that good. But if you have things that are satisfying taste wise too, then you just eat less.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's also a piece, we did an episode where we talked about metabolic adaptation, where the body starts to adjust based on what it knows it's getting. And we talked about that in terms of, kind of more in that episode, we talked about it more in terms of macronutrients, but the same happens with micronutrients. If the body always knows exactly what it's getting, it stops working very hard. And then it starts to protect itself, which again is that state of stress and survival rather than rest and digest and thriving. And vitality and energy and health span. The one other thing that I'd be remiss if we didn't mention in this conversation, so I was interviewed on somebody else's podcast, and they were talking about how, well, it's just easier to buy 2 vegetables and eat them all week. And I think there's this perception that it's a trade-off, that if we have variety, it's less easy. And I don't experience that for me. When I buy things at the grocery store, I will say, and I joke, that I'm not great at buying food only for one person, or I buy a lot and then it lasts longer. But some things go bad before I have a chance to finish it, or, but I don't necessarily find it more difficult to cut up some of 3 different things than it is to cut up more of one thing. How do you think about that as far as this like trade-off with ease?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things that, like, maybe the cauliflower is already cut up, and so you've got this bag and you just kind of pour it into the, I mean, if you really are pressed for time, but like to make like an omelet and have a couple of mushrooms and a couple of peppers in the omelet, it takes, really seconds longer than just having maybe some eggs and cheese or something. So I think there is a perception, and also, like, I feel like comfort and convenience is overrated in terms of when we hold that up as the goal, that the rewards to me sometimes are when things are more challenging, or when you took the time, you went into the certain drawer and you got out all your spices and things. There's something rewarding about that. And that, I don't know when that exactly happened, where comfort and convenience became the goal for so many people, that why is, even if it isn't that
with the microwave meal.
Yeah. Like, even if it isn't more difficult, like you're saying, what's the difference between cutting up 3 different vegetables than the one? Even if that's an illusion, there's still this idea that the challenge of making a meal, the challenge of running a marathon, whatever it happens to be, can be more rewarding. Why isn't that held up as the goal for most people? There are always going to be people who get it, but then there are lots and lots of people who, the goal is sitting on the couch and just having things brought to you, like the deliveries and all those things,
I mean, I don't begrudge those people anything.
No.
I'm that person,
No.
Although I just order a variety of foods instead of, making them. But I do think the other thing that I see, and similar to your point of this isn't necessarily backed by research, and maybe that will come in time. But when I see people who eat less variety for the sake of ease, or for whatever reason, maybe they haven't learned to enjoy a bunch of different vegetables, whatever it is. When we eat less variety, it perpetuates, dare I say, exacerbates the on-off, good, bad, black, white mentality. And part of living in the gray area is this variety, is saying all of these things are part of this whole spectrum of eating and supporting our health. Yeah, so maybe one day they'll do a study to, prove us right.
Right.
So let that sink in for people and highlight our partner for this episode. And then we'll come back with a lot of the things that we can do to make it easy and simple to add that variety. We've already talked about a few things, but we've got some more ideas. Thanks to Kegel for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. If you've ever sneezed, laughed, or coughed and peed a little, think about your pelvic floor. If you've ever resisted a certain exercise because you might pee a little, or because you don't feel quite so balanced, think about your pelvic floor. If you've ever held in your elimination, number 1 or number 2, and then home later had a hard time going, think about your pelvic floor. What's most interesting about all of these scenarios is that they're not only about women, and they're not even only about people of a certain age. I know kids who have those bathroom challenges, and men too, for that matter. And for the ladies, it's not just about having a baby or after having a baby that we might want to think about our pelvic floor. And sure, we've been told to do Kegels, but how often do we really do them? And other than squeezing, do you do anything else? Because it turns out that there is a whole lot more to a Kegel. And that's why I love Kegel. They have gamified Kegel exercises with their device and their app. So you play games on the app while using the device, and it's biofeedback in action. They have a device that you insert, and then they also have one that you sit on so that it works for kids, male and female bodies. Friends, I can't even tell you how important pelvic floor health is, and pelvic floor dysfunction is not inevitable. So like I said, Kegel uses gamification, biofeedback, and progress tracking to help us add pelvic floor exercises to our routines, which means sexual health support, digestive health support, and so much more. These are truly quality of life factors and healthy aging. So go to kegol.com, KGOAL.com, to learn more, explore the options, and get started. You can use code TREPECK, TREPECK, for 10% off, or text the word Kegel, KGOAL, to 833-801-0500. We'll send you that link where the discount is automatically applied. So remember, you're texting Kegel, KGOAL, to 833-801-0500 to get your Kegel device today for 10% off. Remember, pelvic floor health supports everything from core strength to bladder control, and Kegel is your practical, approachable solution. Okay, Christine, when it comes to adding more variety, getting that nutrient diversity, I call it becoming a varietarian. What do you call it?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we'll stick with that.
Yeah. Right? So as a varietarian, it's, we can think of, yes, those macronutrients, but also the micronutrients, right? Like all of the things. We actually have a nutrition nugget called varietarian. So you can go back to that. But think about, organic soy and hemp and nutritional yeast. And then there's also fish or chicken, turkey, pork, grass-fed organic red meat, quality fats from a variety of sources. So avocado, olive oil, walnuts, sardines, anchovies. Yes, those grains, even though we sort of poo-pooed the corn and the rice and the wheat, but also those things can have a place in our variety. It's more a function of how much of them is in there compared to the other things. And like with our fruits and vegetables, we talked about colors before, and eating the rainbow. I think that's a really simple way to get more. And Christine, you talked about spices, which reminded me, we have a nutrition nugget. I think I called it Use the Globe, as an idea of adding more variety in the spices that we use, or even in the foods that we use. Like, how could we travel the globe, which is made possible by our modern grocery approaches, to then change it up, have something different, maybe eat something that we haven't had in a while. I also find it easier if you go to a different grocery store and it forces you to just see what's there. Sorry, what were you going to say?
For people who work with people from other cultures, for people who go to church and mix with people from other cultures, that I don't think we take advantage of the fact that their foods and their cuisine could be something that we could try out, and for us to ask someone else for a recipe for maybe a soup or a stew, or how do you prepare this particular, like, I see this vegetable or this fruit in the supermarket, but I don't know what to do with it. People are so honored. They are so honored to have someone kind of cross over from their culture into someone else's culture. It's almost like, when you learn someone else's language, they're just so thrilled, that you made the effort. So,
Yeah.
so that's a big resource, I think, and is like the real people that we actually, are coming in contact with, but maybe never thought to ask about how can we share recipes.
Yeah, I love that because it also builds that community and connection piece that we know is so important also for health span and longevity and healthy aging and all of that kind of stuff. I love that. I always think about if I did those produce boxes or some of the ones where they just send you things and it forces you to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah.
Although some of them will come with recipes too. But, I think we can put systems or structure around us that make it easier to end up with variety.
Like going to the local farmer's market, and again, rather than going past all the tables with produce that you don't know what they are, go up to the person who grew it and say, what can I do with this? Is this a starch? Is this a squash? What is this? You don't even know what it is half the time, and so especially for people who are doing more exotic growing, that they're very happy to share recipes and ideas for you. It might be that you boil it for a couple of hours. Maybe it's that you bake it, it's whatever it is, they're happy to tell you.
For sure. And I think this is also a place where the internet can be your friend. You can find on the internet how to make something, or if you've tried making it before and it didn't quite go so well, what did I mess up? What's the thing that I'm missing? And making this thing taste as delicious as it must because other people eat it all the time, I also think, again, to minimize some of that overwhelm, focus on the sides. You don't have to completely, what's the phrase, uproot the apple cart, whatever the...
Overturn?
Yeah, whatever, that thing with the apple cart, dump it over, right? We can keep it simple if we focus on 1 or 2 new things a week, or even only sticking to the things we know we already enjoy, but making sure that we have every color of the rainbow in the fridge. Looking at the side dishes for a meal and saying, okay, I know everybody's going to eat this one. I have string beans. Could I mix in other colors with those string beans? Is there some purple cabbage or carrots or butternut squash or sweet potatoes or another, orange, right? How many different colors could we mix together and let that guide us? Because these foods generally all taste fine together. I think it's pretty hard to mess it up.
One thing that saved me was the flash frozen organic vegetables, because
Yes.
you can have, like you said, you want to make sure that you get through as many of the vegetables in a week so they don't go bad. But there are times at the end of the week where I've used up everything that I had bought at the supermarket that week. And so then to be able to go into my fridge, and this is also true of fruit, I get big bags of blueberries, frozen blueberries and things, and you can make them into smoothies. But even the frozen peas, the frozen corn, some of these starchy things, that just throw it into some soup. And again, you've got the color again, whereas the lentil soup is just brown, and now you've got some lovely little pieces of yellow corn poking up and maybe a few peppers, things like that. So, and it's good for you as well.
Absolutely. And by that token, too, I think going back to what you were saying about the farmer's market and asking them what to do with things, if we simply focus on what's seasonal and local, we will inherently end up with more variety than if we're always going to the grocery store where every single thing is available all year round. And that helps with the affordability piece. I mean, one of the things I like about the flash frozen organic is that it's a really affordable way to end up with organic produce, that certainly lasts longer, but the farmer's market too. The other thing is you can take the same food and cook it different ways. So maybe some of it is steamed, some of it's roasted, some of it's in a soup, some of it ends up then in a salad or a rice bowl or whatever it is. So there are different ways. And then as we talk about using the globe or all the herbs and spices, we can take the same thing and do it up a bunch of different ways. I want to challenge everybody, make a rainbow meal. So by the way, that's part of what's in our members recipe this week is sort of this rainbow meal. But maybe you add this to your holiday dinner or to, a friend's holiday gathering. How many colors can we put together or assign each person a color of the thing that they're supposed to bring? Make it fun and social, or even simply with your own family. Like, could you choose 3 different colored vegetables? Could we have green, red, and purple? Like, we keep saying how many colors, but I think sometimes making it more specific is potentially a lot easier, And then just recognize that the small pieces translate into more. This is easier, that nutrient diversity, the variety of micronutrients is going to show up in your life in other ways. It's going to show up in that satiety. It's going to show up in the energy. It's going to show up in the little things, feeling satisfied, enjoying the food, and maybe that's where, like I said at the very beginning, maybe this is the dark horse of the holidays, that you're eating things you don't otherwise typically have. It's inherently variety. Maybe it's an overlooked gift of this season that we get to experience these holiday parties and holiday foods that put that variety in there for us. Eat the cranberries, everybody. What do you think, Christine? Anything else? Any other tips, tricks, thoughts to help us add more variety?
Well, I think the sense of adventure, that it's an easy thing for most of us to get into habits around food. So, like you have your standard meals that you make and the familiar taste. So to have this sense of adventure, like almost pretending that you're in a foreign country. But at Christmas or Hanukkah or any of the holidays, people are bringing foods that maybe you never even thought about, and sometimes, you don't need to eat a whole plate of whatever it is, but you can have a bite and just kind of have that feeling of exploration, because you might stumble on something that becomes a new habit for the new year, where you really like something. I remember plantains. I never really knew what that, then you get these.
Oh, I love plantains.
These chips. It turns out they're really healthy. They're good for you, So, again, to just explore, and let's not forget the things that we're drinking as well, because there's variety in the food that we're eating, but people will have all sorts of different kinds of juices and mixed things that they've put together. I love my lemon and cucumber water, things like that, where again, if you were in another country, maybe you'd be more willing to try things. So let's do that at home, if you're actually not going somewhere, to have this sense of adventure around food.
Yeah, there are a bunch of South American restaurants in the city that have this hibiscus juice that is absolutely delicious. Now, I need to sort of water it down a little because it's a little much for me. Also, juice in general isn't my bag, but some of that with some water is unreal. But I love what you said about the sense of adventure, because I think of it too as curiosity, right? The adventure to do it, and then the curiosity to see how we feel, to start to notice what happens when we change things up, when we get that nutrient diversity, the tool for health that no one's talking about. All right, well, now they're talking about it. Now you're talking about it. We're talking about it. All right. Well, friends, on Friday in this week's Nutrition Nugget, we're talking about Starbucks protein drinks. Have you seen these, Christine?
No. What is it?
So Starbucks is now promoting that they have protein drinks that you can put protein into your coffee.
Oh.
So I went online to try to find the information, couldn't find what I wanted. So I went into Starbucks and I kind of caused a whole ordeal. So I ended up having a conversation with the district manager to get this info for you. So we're going to go through it and talk about all of it on Friday in this week's bite-size bonus episode. So be sure, wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow button, and then your app will alert you when it goes live on Friday morning. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Also on the website, you can learn more about working with me as your health coach. Also, my book, Uncomplicating Wellness, is there for you to pick up, or just send a message. And no, just in that, send a message. I love hearing from you, your ideas, your takeaways, your questions. Christine, thank you again for joining me.
A pleasure.
Always. I always love hearing your take on things. And of course, everybody, if you are not already a member, I invite you to the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and of course, supports your health. On top of the 24/7 Ask Me Anything, community chat, discounts, curated content, and more, you'll get this week's recipe for the Southwestern Power Salad with creamy cilantro lime dressing and the Farmer's Market cookbook. So until next week, remember, the tool for health that no one's talking about, that might be the most underrated tool, is nutrient diversity. So eat a variety of foods and truly enjoy this holiday season. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.